No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, today I want to talk about something that has happened to me several times over the years, but it specifically happened a few days ago to me in a situation that kind of like triggered me emotionally just a little bit. And so even though it has happened in the past, because of this particular incident, I thought it was worth talking about it in an episode. And this is the concept of, what do you do when an employee leaves you and then wants to come back? And I'm not talking about, 10 years later, like industries change, people change, like things happen, I'm talking about like 3 to 12 months later, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's such a tough one because obviously how they exited, makes a difference.
Yeah.
But how they performed when they were there, that makes a difference. Like there's a lot that went into it. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because this particular time when it happened, it was an employee who I was like shoveling out the door with both my feet as they were leaving, and very, very happy that was the case. And so when they wanted to come back, it was a very easy call, but it made me think, okay, well, what if it wasn't an easy call? What do you do? Have you ever encountered a situation where an employee left you and then wanted to come back?
Absolutely. Sometimes within a matter of 30 days.
Okay.
Which at that point it's like, come on. I think that, to your point, like it really is about like the terms of the person leaving. And I've had conversations with people where they're looking for, maybe an opportunity to move up. They're looking for a title or, a chance to kind of to be a leader, have more responsibility. And the reality is sometimes in your business, no matter how good your people are, there's just not opportunity right now, for multiple reasons. All the jobs are full. Maybe everybody's doing well. And so their opportunity within your business may be something that you can be honest and tell them, like, this might be a couple of months for a while for a role to open up. Now, of course, things change all the time, but I'm also not a fan of like dangling the carrot of like, just almost there. I promise something will happen, like any of that stuff at all. And so I think, in having conversations where that's happened, I think 2 things, right? 2 times that or 2 scenarios that play out the most. The first scenario is that somebody leaves because another job is willing to pay them a little bit more money. And then, they say, hey, I got an offer, so I'm going to do. And again, like it's, if somebody comes to me and is informing me of the decision they've already made, then I say, hey, that's great. Like if that's decision, I will never tell anybody not to take an opportunity, not to feed their family, not to feed themselves. Not that, hey, by all means, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I care about you. I want you to be successful. Here's maybe a couple of things to keep in mind. But if you made that decision, you made that call, by all means, go.
Yep.
And then what ends up happening is they're there for maybe a couple of weeks and they realize, wait a minute, the money is not worth it. The culture is not the same. The support is not the same. What they sold me in the interview is not nearly what it feels like to work here. And in some instances, that promotion may have turned them into salary. And they realize, oh, so like I don't just get to go home when I want to go home now. And so that scenario. And then the second scenario where I've seen it happen quite a bit is when somebody feels like they have to follow a passion of their own. Like they finally, like they've been doing something, whether it's in the creative space or like maybe the small business space, and maybe they've had a little bit of success or they've made a little bit of money kind of on the side as a side hustle while doing their normal job. And then something happens where they kind of have this decision, like, I'm going to go all into this thing. And they go. And again, like they realize quickly, not having the structure, not having the consistency, not having the support around you on a day-to-day basis where it's just you're on your own, You now report to individuals who pay you directly versus reporting to leaders within an organization. They very quickly reassess, kind of like they're blinded by their passion and their joy to kind of take this long jump, but then they make the jump and they realize like, oh, I really don't have a parachute. Maybe I should go back. And I think those are the two times that it happens the most, where they come back and they're kind of poking around to see if an opportunity to come back might exist.
Yeah, I love those examples because I think you're right. That does kind of cover a lot of times when that happens. But there's something that I see about those two scenarios that they have in common, and that's that you can't just say a blanket statement of in either of those situations, yes, this person is welcome back, or no, this person is not welcome back. To me, it still leaves a lot of room in there for whether the answer is yes or no based on other factors. And so, like, Harvard Business Review did a study on this, and they found that employees who are rehires, their performance tends to remain exactly as it was before they left the first time. And so when I think about it, I think, okay, well, was their performance great before they left? Was it up to par before they left? And if that's the case, then it probably means you didn't want them to go to begin with. And so in a situation like the two circumstances you were talking about, I would never tell an employee not to follow their passion. In fact, I would encourage it. I would encourage an employee to follow their passion, especially the younger they are and the less responsibilities they have from a financial standpoint, because it is so much harder to do that if there's a mortgage and there's kids and a family, and it's a lot harder to have the courage to make those decisions than when you're, right out of college and sharing an apartment with 3 other people. That's a lot easier. So definitely they should be doing that whenever they can. The job market turning can make an employee go from, wow, this side hustle that I'm passionate about and that I love, all of a sudden dried up, But again, if their performance was great before and they left to follow a passion that didn't end up working out, there are very few circumstances where I could see not giving that employee a chance to come back on. I've worked for organizations in the past, and so have you, where there was almost like an unwritten but definitely known kind of culture and rule that if you left for any competitor, then you were not welcome back, period. And that was regardless of how much you contributed and how great an employee you were. And so, like, if you were a salesperson for this organization and you left to become a firefighter and then that didn't work out, you go ahead and come on back. But if you left for the sales organization that is right down the street that is a competitor, you're not coming back, even if you were a great employee. And I always understood at a high level why that policy was in place, but I also didn't like it. I didn't like it because if an employee is deciding that they want to leave your organization for somebody else's organization, why is that? Well, chances are it's because of the first reason you gave, which is they wanted more money. And if they wanted more money, if they came to me with an ultimatum, like, I'm going to need you to match this or I'm gone, they would not be welcome back, because employees can't believe that they can control that and that they can get whatever they want from a salary standpoint simply by threatening to leave. That doesn't create a healthy culture. But if they do it the way you said it, like where they say, I was offered more money, I wouldn't want to ask you to match this because I don't want to put myself in that situation or put you in that situation, but I've decided it's the right move for me, and then they left for that, and then they decide, oh my gosh, there's more to life than salary, I want to come back. I'm okay with that, honestly. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that if they performed well to begin with.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And the few times that I've brought people back to an organization, mostly it was because they actually approached me before either they had an offer or they were considering leaving. Like, I can think of names in my head right now where somebody came to me and said, hey, like, I want to talk to you about my career growth and opportunities here, right? And of course, let's talk about it, and we talk about the work that they're doing. They're doing great work. They want to continue to have responsibility. They want to move up. And then we have that real honest dialogue, which is like, well, first of all, like, I can't tell you how soon that's going to be. Second of all, you have to also take into account that you may have some other people and peers that are working just as hard as you are for this type of an opportunity. So there's no guarantees here. Mm-hmm. Third, if a job was to open, we also would have to consider people that may want to transfer. I wouldn't be responsible if I didn't think about the larger market outside of our store and consider what might else be out there. So like having that level of dialogue with them to say like, of course you have an opportunity. Of course, you do great work. You're going to get an opportunity to sit down at the table and discuss, any open positions that come up here. But I'm just going to tell you like, that's kind of the reality of what we live within. And then, and them saying, well, I might want to look at other places or other opportunities. And I say, great. Like, of course, like what I don't want to lose you, but what can I do to help? Right. Because if that's really what you want to do, if you want to take what you've learned here and maybe fast track yourself into another organization because you're amazing, you do great work. I know you'd be able to do that job. Matter of fact, I would tell you, I know you could do that job, but here are some of the pitfalls that you might run into, like salary, like culture, like, like driven leaders that are more about themselves than they are about you. Like these are all the things that you might run into there, but let's talk about it. Let's have dialogue. But I fully support you. Matter of fact, I'll help you if you want to practice your interview skills and things that are out there, because I've had experience in other organizations. And like I literally had that conversation with, I can think of 2 employees over the last maybe 8 years, where they ended up getting an offer and leaving, and they got the job and they were excited about it. And everybody was like, great, good for you, take it. And both of them within about 45 days had swung on by again and wanted to catch up with me and tell me exactly that what I told them was unfortunately the reality, and that this is what they were dealing with. And, I said to them, I said, look, I told you when we talked the first time that you always have a home here, and that your work that you did and the way in which you left the organization is exactly why I would consider bringing you back. But here's what I will ask. Invest the 6 months, right? Do this for 6 months. Take the time to push yourself, to challenge yourself, to deal with it, because what you're going to find in that 6 months of growth, I can't replicate for you here, but it's going to give you so much more perspective and understanding about the role, about leadership, about people. And it's going to bring you back, if you decide to come back after that time, it's going to bring you back in a different mindset to really understand what you have here and what you're capable of doing here. And I said, so let's do that together. Take the time and let's do it. And both of them did it. One of them did end up coming back about 8 months later, even though they spent the 6 months. The other person ended up leaving that company and going to another company, but then found the work and the culture a lot more acceptable to them, and they really enjoyed the work there. So to this day, I still stay in touch with them, but it's rare that I bring people back. So like to your point, I don't have the whole like maybe pettiness idea of you go somewhere else and you can never come back here, because again, like that would be speaking out of 2 sides of my mouth. Like, go take your money and provide for your family, but not too much and not somewhere I don't want you to go. Like that would be silly.
Well, it's ego. It's ego.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
right.
basically punishing a person because they decided to, make your life harder by leaving. That's all it is.
Spot on, right? And so like that doesn't make sense to me. It's not fair to me. But I do kind of have this unwritten rule in my head, which is like 6 months. You know what I mean? Like it should be at least 6 months, because what could you possibly learn in 30 to 45 days? And if you saw it and learned it, what have you done to overcome it? And that perseverance and grit is so important.
Well, it's important because they're likely to eventually see at least some of those elements in your organization that they loved. Like maybe not collectively, maybe it really is a bad place and they want to leave, but we need reminders of the things that we won't tolerate in our lives in order to not take the good things for granted. And I know it because I've seen employees do exactly the same thing, and they think they know everything, and they think they want to leave and they want to try something else out. And absolutely, you go do that. But in my head, I'm thinking, this is like your first or second job ever, or your first career after college ever, and everything else you've done has been like, basic entry level, unskilled labor to help pay for college, whatever it is. And this is your first job. You have no idea what is out there, and that's not your fault, because this is your first job. It is what it is. But if you're going to go find it, there's a value in that. And the value isn't running home and saying, oh, never mind, I changed my mind. It didn't feel comfortable on day one. You're absolutely right. It has to be long enough for you to be able to take something from that and remember it and hold on to it, so that when you start to see issues with this organization, if you come back, or another organization when you go to, it's no different than when you decide to finally get married. Like whenever I see people who say, oh, we were, they were my first, boyfriend, girlfriend, and now we're married. We started it when we were 14 years old. I think, that's incredible. I'm really, really happy for you that worked. I don't know that I have the ability to have done that without seeing what's good and what's bad and deciding, okay, this is what I won't tolerate for me. This is what I will tolerate. This is who won't tolerate me. This is who will tolerate me. And yeah, so it's just so much important things in there from a learning standpoint. You're spot on. The other thing I want to mention too is that something that I've seen that is very difficult for a lot of leaders is something you just touched on, which is giving the employee the reality of the situation in terms of their potential where they are in your organization. And if the employee is high performing, if the employee is someone who you think, if there was an open spot right now, they would absolutely be an interview candidate right now today, then that's an easy conversation to have, because you can say, yes, of course, the only thing standing in your way is potentially someone from the outside, or a different location that wants to come here, or just the timing. There's just no open spots. These are all those are all external things. If what's stopping the employee is performance, but yet they still do their current job well, that's a much harder conversation for many leaders to have, because they think, ooh, if I'm honest with this employee and say, yeah, I wouldn't put my name behind you being promoted right now at all, and it's going to be at least 6 months to a year of working really hard before we can even revisit that conversation. But your current job, you do really well, and I don't want to lose you. And so do I string you along and say, oh yeah, you just hold on a little bit longer, like you said at the beginning? And I think that is, I did that once when I was a very, very young leader, and it just felt terrible, because seeing that employee believe that they had the ability to move up without doing any of the work, or they thought they were there already, for weeks and months afterwards, it just didn't feel good inside me. It felt like I was living a lie around that employee until they finally left the organization. And so that will never happen again, just from my own kind of mental health standpoint. But that is a very hard conversation to have. So if I'm a leader, I want to make sure that if an employee's having this conversation with me about potentially wanting to leave, I need to get myself straight in my mind and think, okay, realistically, what are these employees' chances, or what is the potential of them here? And I need to be very honest about what that potential is, because if I'm not right now at a point where I'm willing to write an email to a colleague of mine at another location or another department saying, you'd be stupid not to take this person and promote them. If I can't do that right now, that employee needs to know that, or they're not making the decision based on all the information.
Absolutely. And with that, it's time for this episode's 1 minute hack.
The 1 minute hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. I need you to go into this process assuming that the work you're doing to develop your people and grow them and make them better is good enough to where another organization would want them, where there's potential of them leaving. Because if you're not doing that, you're already shortchanging your people to begin with. But if we can assume that you're doing that, if we can assume that this is an actual issue where another organization might see the talent in your team and think, ooh, I'd want some of those people for my organization, and this is a conversation that might actually end up happening between you and your employees, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that every time you're with your team, as a group or as individuals, that you approach this from a standpoint of proactivity. And so telling your people outright, if you have opportunities to follow a passion that might take you away from the organization, if there's a reason why you feel like your future might be better taken care of for whatever reason outside of this team or this organization, please feel free to come to me and ask for my support and my help. I will help you get there if that's what you want to do. I'm not going to try to keep you. I'm not going to try to tell you what you can't do. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you exactly what the score is here, and I'm going to help you get to where you want to go if that's the best thing for you. Make sure you have all your options. What that will do is, one, it will make them less likely to leave, first of all, because the support they're getting from you in that circumstance is one they're unlikely to get in a lot of organizations. But two, you're likely to be involved in the conversation at the beginning as opposed to after they've had 3 interviews and a job offer has been placed on them from this other organization. Now they're coming to you when it might already be too late. And so, using the proactive approach to have these conversations and being involved in these conversations from the beginning, I think you're more likely to get the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a great woman to hack. And, the reality is that some people will leave just because they're not happy with the work. They're not happy with name a bunch of different things potentially. And that's okay for them to find other employment somewhere else and be able to leave and walk away. What you're talking about here is the larger team collectively understanding that you're not there to hold them back, and that as a leader of people, you're saying my responsibility is being accountable to the development of others, which means that I would fully expect some of you to get promoted here, to get transferred to other places, to get recruited by other companies, to think about yourself and exceed your own expectations and start your own business. I expect that to happen all the time. And if people aren't moving on and figuring things out, then we're not really doing our job here. So let me know what I can do to help support you, and I promise I will do that. And then I even will say, some of you in this room already know I've helped you with some of your resumes. I've answered some of those questions for you. I've called my connections in other organizations when you've told me that you have an interest in working there, and I'm perfectly fine with that, because if you're coming to work every day doing great work, I'm going to help you and do everything I can to support you being successful into the future.
I love that. Throughout this entire episode, something keeps replaying in my head, and that's the famous Richard Branson quote, which is when the CFO of his organization came to him and said, "What happens if we give all these people all these skills and training and development and they leave?" And his response was, "Well, what happens if we don't and they stay?"
Exactly. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.